Okay folks, let's get on to part 2 and get this brush put back together. There's a couple of pieces in here you really need to pay attention to, and we'll just go ahead and tackle these in order. You have a lever guide, has an S shape, and you really need to pay attention how this lever guide goes back in. And has a funny S shape to it, and as long as you install it in that S fashion with the S tip, the very outer edge pointing toward the handle, you're in good shape. Just go ahead and take a look at the pictures, and I've got the dental brush holding the little piece there so you could get a better look at it. So just go ahead and follow along, look at the picture there, make sure it's positioned that way like the letter S, facing towards the handle with the little loop there, and you're good to go. So we'll go ahead and grab that little piece first and put it on in, and then the trigger goes in on after that. Some triggers have a little dip in them, and you need to make sure that little dip faces towards the handle also. So with that little bit of information to start us off, let's go ahead and get going. Make sure everything's spotlessly clean. Grab the airbrush body, and you're going to go ahead and take that little lever guide and you're going to put it down in the airbrush body sideways, and then you're going to go ahead and turn it once you get it down in there. And it's sitting down in there shaped like the letter S facing towards the handle. So and then you're going to take your trigger, and this is kind of hard to do in the video, and it's hard to do when you're not filming, but you just fuss around with it a little bit, you'll get it to drop down in there. Just make sure you don't knock that lever guide out of position after getting your trigger down in there. Just kind of be patient with the trigger. If you've got a flashlight, maybe you can shine it down in there and get it in there with that. Go ahead and press it down once, make sure it actuates the little plunger down in the air valve. Alright, then you need to go ahead and get the needle chuck back in. A needle chuck guide, they call it in some manuals. A little spring goes on afterwards. And this one has a little sleeve that goes on after that. Call it a spring case in some of the manuals. I've got several different airbrush manuals, and the names they give to these various parts vary in different manuals. So anyhow, work the trigger back a few times. Be easy at this point though, because it can pop out. The needle's not in, the trigger will be able to pop out. Now normally you'd have your nozzle on first at the other end of the brush, but since my nozzle's soaking in the cleaning solution, I'm just going to go ahead and gently slide the needle in to hold those pieces in place, the trigger, what have you, so it doesn't fly out. I'm not going to have it sticking out the front of the brush though, so I'm just showing you that it's coming out the front. I'm going to retract it, pull it back through, just leave it set to where it's not going to bump anything. Now I'm going to grab my nozzle that was soaking in the Createx cleaning solution. I was spraying with Createx earlier and had some crud build up in there from not cleaning the brush right away. So let this be a lesson learned to you guys out there. Clean your brush right away. Do not let it sit after spraying. Okay, we're taking the nozzle and we're putting it on the front of the airbrush body. It's kind of a tiny piece, so be patient working that on there. Make sure you don't cross thread it. Any resistance, and you want to definitely make sure that you stop there and find out why there was resistance. Take the little wrench if you need to get that on there. Normally I just use my fingers, a fingernail, and put it on there finger tight, what have you. And just put the next piece back on there, the air cap body, what have you, the nozzle cap. It's called different names in different manuals, like I said. So get that back on there, and put the rest of the pieces back on in order. The crown cap just went on. Now we're going to push the needle in gently until it hits the end of the nozzle. Do not want to force it. Do not force your needle into the nozzle. You can damage the needle and the nozzle by doing so. Okay, after that you tightened up the chucking nut, and now we're just putting the handle on and tightening the handle up and put the cap on the top, and you're good to go. And there you have it, all cleaned up and assembled and ready for another usage. Now you see there's a cap still laying down there. That's from another brush. That's a standard cap for that brush, and it doesn't have the crown cut out on it. It's a standard needle cap. So now we'll just go ahead and get the nozzle in this brush. Be careful putting the nozzle in. Again, make sure you don't cross thread it. And you're going to go ahead and put in the lever guide, same as before, paying attention to the little curve on there. Turn it in there sideways, get it in, and then turn it again. I'm going to put the trigger in. Be impatient, just kind of be careful putting it down in there. If you need to use a flashlight, shine it down in there, make sure it drops in place. Okie dokie. Now we'll move on into the needle chucking guide. Slide it on in. Slide a spring in on it next. Just kind of goes back together similar to the other brush. Little sleeve that goes on after it. Just want to put this stuff on there hand tight. Don't want to force anything. And we're going to get the needle chucking nut on. Just going to barely put that on there, just so it stays on the end. Kind of helps you have a little hole to sight to slide the needle down into. If the needle binds anywhere, you know, back it up, check your trigger, make sure it's not cocked sideways and hitting the needle, and then go ahead and slide the needle on in. Slide the needle all the way in until it gently stops down into the nozzle. Do not force it. Tighten your chucking nut up, and then put the rest of the pieces of your airbrush back on. Let's put the nozzle cap on. I'm pulling the trigger back here so I don't bump the needle. Could very well have put the nozzle and nozzle cap on before putting the trigger in and the needle, what have you. I mean, there's no rules as far as this is concerned. I'm just showing you different ways of putting it back together. And the needle cap. This one does not have the crown cut out on it, so if you're back flushing the brush, it does not have the crown cut out on it. You can just put your finger on the end of that needle cap and flush away. Put the handle on. Call it done. Hope this video's helped you guys out. The cap on top. Whoops, don't want to forget that.